For decades, Gene Hackman has remained one of the most respected and private figures in Hollywood. Known for his performances in films like The French Connection and Unforgiven, he built a career defined by intensity, realism, and control. But in recent years, his name has begun appearing in a very different kind of conversation. One driven not by film history, but by online speculation and viral headlines. One of the most widely circulated claims suggests that the Federal Bureau of Investigation uncovered a hidden tunnel beneath a property linked to Hackman, followed by the discovery of something described as disturbing. The phrasing alone is enough to trigger curiosity, and that is precisely why the claim has gained traction across multiple platforms. However, when examined through verified sources, public records, and law enforcement reporting standards, there is no confirmed evidence supporting this scenario. To understand how such a claim spreads, it is important to look at how information moves online. High-engagement headlines often combine a recognizable public figure with an element of secrecy or danger. In this case, a respected actor is paired with a federal investigation and a hidden structure. This combination creates a narrative that feels plausible on the surface, even when it lacks factual backing. In reality, investigations conducted by agencies like the FBI follow strict legal and procedural frameworks. Any major discovery, especially one involving a public figure, would typically generate multiple layers of reporting, including official statements, local law enforcement confirmation, and coverage from established news organizations. The absence of these indicators is a strong signal that the claim is not based on verified events. Publicly available information about Gene Hackman's life shows a very different picture. After retiring from acting in the early 2000s, he stepped away from Hollywood and focused on writing and private life. He has lived largely out of the public spotlight, with only occasional appearances or updates referenced in interviews or local reporting. There have been no credible reports linking him to any criminal investigation, hidden infrastructure, or unusual property discoveries. The idea of a secret tunnel itself is not entirely fictional in a broader historical sense. Across the United States, there are documented cases of underground structures beneath older homes, including storage spaces, utility passages, and historical tunnels. However, these are typically tied to construction practices, geography, or specific historical uses, not hidden criminal activity involving federal agencies and celebrities. In many cases, when underground spaces are discovered, they are handled by local authorities, construction inspectors, or property engineers. Only in rare and highly specific circumstances would a federal agency like the FBI become directly involved. And when that does happen, it is almost always documented in official reports and covered by credible media outlets. Another factor contributing to the spread of this claim is the transformation of entertainment content into pseudo-news. Videos and posts are often presented with dramatic narration, selective imagery, and suggestive language, giving the impression of a real investigation without providing verifiable details. This format can blur the line between fact and speculation, especially for viewers who are not actively cross-checking sources. It is also important to consider the role of legacy celebrities in these narratives. Figures like Gene Hackman carry decades of public recognition, which makes them effective anchors for viral content. Even in retirement, their names attract attention, and that attention can be leveraged to amplify unverified claims. When examining this specific rumor, there are several key indicators that point away from authenticity. There are no official statements from the FBI, no supporting documentation from local authorities, no property records indicating unusual construction activity, and no coverage from established investigative journalists. In the context of modern media, where even minor incidents are quickly reported, this level of absence is significant. Instead, what exists is a pattern. A headline appears, it spreads through repetition, and it gains perceived credibility through volume rather than verification. This is a common cycle in digital content. especially when the subject involves mystery, authority, and a recognizable public figure. Understanding this pattern is essential for interpreting claims like this one. It is not just about whether a specific story is true or false, but about recognizing how and why certain narratives are constructed and shared. And, in this case, the available evidence points clearly toward speculation rather than a documented event. As the claim about a supposed discovery beneath a property linked to Gene Hackman continues to circulate, the focus shifts from the headline itself to the mechanisms that allow such narratives to persist. In the absence of verified reporting from the Federal Bureau of Investigation or any local authority, the discussion becomes less about an event and more about how modern media ecosystems process and amplify unconfirmed information. One of the key elements behind the endurance of this type of story is repetition across platforms. A claim does not need to originate from a credible source to gain visibility. Once it appears in a format that attracts attention, typically a short video, a dramatic caption, or a thumbnail implying secrecy, it can be replicated and reshared without additional verification. Each repetition reinforces the illusion that multiple sources are confirming the same event, when in reality, they may all trace back to a single unverified origin. This process is often described in media analysis as information echoing, where a claim becomes louder through duplication rather than evidence. In the case of the alleged tunnel discovery, there is no documented chain of reporting that leads back to an official investigation. Instead, the narrative appears to have been constructed through a combination of speculation, visual suggestion, and association with a recognizable public figure. The concept of hidden structures beneath private properties does have a factual basis in certain contexts. Older estates, particularly in parts of the United States with long construction histories, sometimes include basements, crawl spaces, or utility corridors that may not be immediately visible. However, these are typically recorded in architectural plans, property documents, or inspection reports. They are not secret in the sense implied by viral headlines, nor are they commonly associated with federal investigations. In legitimate cases where unusual structures are discovered, the response is usually handled at the local level. City inspectors, engineers, or regional law enforcement agencies conduct the initial assessment. Only under specific circumstances, such as evidence of organized criminal activity or national security concerns, would a federal agency like the FBI become directly involved. Even then, the process is documented through formal channels, and the outcome is typically reported by established news organizations. When examining the public record related to Gene Hackman, there is no indication of such activity. His post-retirement life has been characterized by privacy and a consistent absence from controversy. He has not been linked to any criminal investigations, property disputes, or structural discoveries of the kind described in the rumor. This consistency across decades of reporting further weakens the credibility of the claim. Another factor that contributes to the persistence of these narratives is the blending of entertainment techniques with informational content. Video creators often use cinematic music, archival footage, and authoritative-sounding narration to present speculative ideas as if they were confirmed facts. This style can create a sense of urgency and realism, even when the underlying information lacks verification. For viewers, the distinction between presentation and evidence becomes critical. A well-produced video can feel convincing, but credibility depends on the presence of verifiable sources, not on production quality. In the case of the alleged FBI discovery, no such sources have been identified. It is also worth considering how audience expectations influence the reception of these stories. Modern viewers are accustomed to true crime documentaries, investigative series, and expose-style reporting. When a headline combines elements of mystery, law enforcement, and a well-known figure, it aligns with those expectations. This alignment can make the story feel plausible, even in the absence of supporting evidence. From a broader perspective, this situation reflects a shift in how information is consumed. Traditional news reporting relies on verification, accountability, and traceable sources. Digital content, by contrast, often prioritizes engagement, speed, and emotional impact. These priorities can lead to the rapid spread of narratives that have not undergone the same level of scrutiny. In analyzing the tunnel claim, the lack of corroboration is the most significant factor. There are no official documents, no eyewitness accounts from credible sources, and no investigative reports confirming the existence of such a structure or the involvement of federal authorities. This absence is not a minor detail. It is a central indicator that the claim does not meet the standards of verified reporting. At the same time, the continued circulation of the story demonstrates how easily a narrative can persist once it captures public attention. Even when corrected or questioned, the original claim may continue to appear in new formats, reaching audiences who encounter it for the first time without context. This cycle highlights the importance of critical evaluation. Identifying the origin of a claim, checking for official confirmation, and comparing it against established reporting standards are essential steps in determining credibility. Without these steps, it becomes difficult to distinguish between documented events and constructed narratives. In this case, the available evidence remains consistent. There is no verified record of a tunnel discovery beneath a property associated with Gene Hackman, and no confirmed involvement of the FBI in such an event. The persistence of the claim involving Gene Hackman and a supposed discovery by the Federal Bureau of Investigation ultimately reveals more about modern content behavior than about any real-world event. By the time a rumor reaches wide circulation, it often evolves into multiple versions, each adding new details that were never part of an original verified source. This layered storytelling effect can make a false claim appear complex and therefore believable, even when no factual foundation exists. In examining how these narratives evolve, one pattern stands out clearly. Initial posts tend to be vague, focusing on curiosity-driven phrases such as secret tunnel or disturbing discovery. As the claim spreads, later versions begin to introduce specific details, such as the involvement of law enforcement, the scale of the alleged structure, or implied connections to hidden activity. These added details are rarely supported by documentation, yet they increase engagement by making the story feel more concrete. This process is not unique to this case. Media researchers have documented similar patterns across multiple viral claims, particularly those involving well-known individuals. The presence of a recognizable name increases initial attention, while the addition of investigative elements, such as references to federal agencies, adds perceived credibility. Together, these elements create a narrative that feels authoritative. Even when it lacks verification from a factual standpoint, there remains no confirmed evidence that any property associated with Gene Hackman contains a hidden tunnel of the type described. Nor is there any record of an FBI investigation related to such a discovery. Public records, which include property documentation and local reporting, do not support the existence of unusual underground structures tied to his residence. In situations where structural anomalies are identified, they are typically recorded during inspections or renovations and handled through standard regulatory processes. It is also important to consider how official investigations are documented. Agencies like the FBI operate under strict transparency and reporting requirements. While not all details of an investigation are made public immediately, significant discoveries, especially those involving public figures, are usually confirmed through formal statements or credible media coverage. The complete absence of such confirmation in this case is a strong indicator that the claim is not grounded in reality. Another aspect worth noting is the role of visual media in reinforcing belief. Images or video clips associated with these claims often do not originate from the alleged location. Instead, they may depict unrelated underground spaces, construction sites, or archival footage repurposed to fit the narrative. Without proper context, these visuals can create a misleading impression that supports the claim, even though they are not connected to it. The continued circulation of the tunnel story also reflects a broader shift in audience behavior. Viewers increasingly encounter information through short-form content, where context is limited and verification is not always prioritized. In this environment, the line between entertainment and factual reporting can become blurred, allowing speculative narratives to spread alongside legitimate news. At the same time, the endurance of Gene Hackman's public recognition plays a role. Even in retirement, his name carries weight due to decades of respected work in film. This recognition makes him a frequent subject of retrospective content, which can sometimes be combined with unrelated claims to generate interest. The result is a narrative that appears connected to his life, but is not supported by actual events. When all available information is considered, the conclusion remains consistent. There is no verified record of a secret tunnel discovery beneath a property linked to Gene Hackman, and no evidence of FBI involvement in such a case. The claim exists primarily within the realm of online speculation, sustained by repetition rather than confirmation. Understanding this distinction is essential for evaluating similar stories in the future. The presence of dramatic language, recognizable figures, and implied authority does not substitute for documented evidence. Verified information requires traceable sources, official confirmation, and consistency across independent reports. In the absence of these elements, the most accurate interpretation is that the story reflects a constructed narrative rather than a real-world investigation. And while it continues to circulate as a headline, its foundation remains unsupported by the standards that define credible reporting.